After all of the success and excitement surrounding the Hairton music video from a few months back, with the possibility of a new album on the horizon for all of us to enjoy, Wardruna is back once more with the single and music video for Himinndotter, Daughter of the Sky, with what I believe is, if I can start this video on a pretty bold claim, the most beautiful that Wardruna's music has ever been. But aside from the sheer beauty of the music itself, which struck me in the opening moments, also, for the first time since Grau, is a further exploration of the animist side of Wardruna's music and spirit. And what I do believe is within Himinndotter a true animist's manifesto. Let's talk about it. So in the spirit of fostering music appreciation here on the channel, just as I did with the video about the Hairton single, I'm sort of doing this video as a way to start a conversation rather than to end one, right? The purpose of this video is not for me to tell you all there is to know about Himinndotter. Instead, in the spirit of music appreciation, which is the core spirit of this channel, what I want is for you guys to sort of talk yourselves in the comments or anything like that, and really just fostering a spirit of talking about the music that we're listening to more intentionally and more deliberately, rather than just passively consuming everything we listen to. So that's my disclaimer at the top of the video. What I really am interested in is just seeing what you all have to say about the music as well, especially when you sort of peek under the hood and see what's going on. So I'm going to follow the same formula I did last time pretty much, where I'm going to talk about the video and the visuals, and then I'm going to talk about the lyrics and the music, and along the way sort of thread together how both the visuals and the music work together to create a coherent artistic piece, right? So the video was filmed in tundra, which I adore. The tundra has a dear place in my heart. Living in Colorado, I'm only about an hour and a half drive from the tundra of the Rocky Mountains, and we're also going camping there this weekend, so it seemed a little fitting for myself. So I love the setting. It's very different, and I'm going to talk about how the setting also fits in with sort of the animist narrative that is being threaded throughout the lyrics. But the tundra offers this awesome color scheme, right? You have the clear blue sky, you have the gray of the mountains dotted with a little bit of snow that's left, along with like the golds and browns of the tundra grass itself. So just the setting creates this amazing color scheme, but that natural color scheme is further enhanced by just the incredible post-production work on this, which is following that same motif from Hairton, where there's that sort of retro sci-fi movie film grain on it, but a lot more color in this video than the Hairton one, and it definitely draws you in and visually goes along with what I'm going to talk about musically, where this song is very different for Wardruna, at least I feel that way. And just having a very, it's not overly saturated, but just having a very colorful music video go along with the music itself, which also can be said to be more colorful. I think there's a really good interaction there between the new visual and also the new stylistic direction, right? I also love the motif of just that single sapling sitting in the tundra. There's just something there that is just so evocative, further, decorated with Lindy's free-spirited dancing in the tundra around this sapling, which just really lends itself well to the message of this song. Lindy's dancing, you guys know that I feel is actually pretty dear part of the Wardruna experience, because her dancing is the essence of free-spiritedness, and free-spiritedness is a common theme of Himinndotter as well. And then lastly, from these visuals, what struck me is just that wandering pilgrims motif. As the camera zoomed out from the beginning, I was like, oh, is that a new singer? Oh, by the end of that, pan out, there are like 10 new people, and I'm like, oh, this is an ensemble, right? So there's this ensemble of like these people just wandering through the tundra with Eilif on his lure, playing the birch lure, if I understand correctly, which is great. Normally we're seeing him play the bronze lure, but seeing this more wooden lure, sort of leading this group of wandering pilgrims through the tundra. But yeah, this wandering pilgrims motif is just so poignant for what is being said in the lyrics. Instead of it seeming like they really know where they're going, they're true wandering pilgrims in like that classical folklore sense, where they just go wherever, hoping that one day they will find what they're looking for. They don't really have a sense of where they're going or where what they're looking for will ultimately be. They just wander, right? Because the wandering is the searching. The way that this large group of people are just walking seemingly aimlessly and also slowly, there's not much of a determination, as in like, in time I will get there. That motif of the wandering pilgrims just created this sense of suspense or mystery, or at least just like questioning throughout this whole video, that they really kept my attention visually throughout the video. So between all of these motifs, the single sapling, right? The wandering group of pilgrims. But then also, I'm not an expert on Norwegian ecosystems, but if these mountains that are in the background are anything like the Rocky Mountains that we have here, I think there's a lot to be said about the fact that these mountains are supposed to have glaciers. Okay? The only glacier we have here in the Rockies near where I live is Arapaho Glacier, and it has had a negative glacier capacity since, I believe, the 70s. So there is also that visual communication that in the background are these mountains that are barren. And of course, now we are used to, in the late summer, in regions like this, yeah, they're going to be bare. They're not supposed to be that way, right? Historically, the glaciers and the snow has been on there year-round, and it's a very recent, unfortunate development that the snow is gone by the end of the summer and has to rebuild itself every fall. So I also think there's a lot there, but I'm also not from Norway. I'm not familiar with how the snow or the ecosystems on these mountain ranges act. But if that is the case, I think there's also even more there in the motif of the glacierless mountains atop the tundra. So anyway, so that's how I believe all of these visuals are working together to really enhance the lyrics, right? Which I believe is where the meat of Himinndotter really is. So let's talk about the music, because I do want to save the lyrics for last, because I do believe that they deserve most of our attention, right? So musically, I already said this is what I do believe is the most beautiful that Wardruna's music has ever been. And just as someone who teaches music appreciation, I'm using beautiful in like the classical sense, the traditional sense, because of course I believe that Wardruna's music is beautiful, right? But when I'm using it this way, I mean like, there's nothing about, that rough and raw feeling of why we love listening to this genre of music. Rather, it's just like majesty and beauty, right? And that is probably one of the boldest new steps for Wardruna, and also just how much of this song is in major. It still is pretty much like minor beginning and end, but throughout there's a lot more time spent in major that lends itself also to the setting, which gives it this sense of hopefulness, of optimism, maybe, that is undercut by the fact that the song ends unresolved. What I mean by that is the way the music works, right, is you have your chord progressions that ultimately they start on one chord and they end on that same chord. This song, Himinndotter, ends without resolving to that home chord, especially with the associated lyric that we are nothing without the shepherd. There's the act of not resolving the music makes that a question, if that makes any sense. The fact that you never resolve that last chord means that the lyric associated with it is most likely posed with uncertainty. So I'm trying to say really is just that like the way that this song ends is pretty significant and intentional, right? But I could spend a lot of time diving into the music theory and all of that, that I really probably don't think fits the essence of what this video is supposed to do. So maybe for another time. But yeah, ultimately I think that Himinndotter is the biggest stylistic step. It's as big of a stylistic step in a new direction as Kvitraven was from the Runalioth trilogy. The style of Himinndotter is very different from what we are used to hearing from Wardruna. And so in a lot of ways, I think that that's foreshadowing that Birna, this new album that was announced with this song. I think we really should be expecting a new side of Wardruna here. And I'm going to sort of end the video talking more about that, but I'm just going to put a pin in that for now, that there's probably going to be a lot new here with Birna. And Himinndotter is sort of the first taste of that. What I also love about the music is that middle section with Lindy's nasally chant associated with the dance in the music video. It adds the sense of tension and suspense, but also gives a break from that optimism to, I don't know, maybe it is sort of like, is supposed to be in tandem with it, where the chant is actually a chant for what the lyrics and the music are hoping for. So there might be more play there, but I would have to listen and watch a lot more, because again, these are first impressions, but there could be a link there between Lindy's, you guys know that I adore the way that she uses her voice as a synthesizer, right? As we talked about in the interview that I had with her here on the channel. And she just continues to add such a dimension to Wardruna's music that it would be noticeable if she was not there. So I do adore that middle chant section. So talking about Lindy, speaking of Lindy, along with all of these stylistic changes, what I hear probably the most prominent is the biggest influence that I've heard yet from Mari Boina's music and Lindy Fai's music. If you listen to Mari Boina's new album and then you also go back and listen to Gula Gula and then listen to Himinndotter, there's a lot of cross-pollination, right? A lot of stylistic inspiration that Himinndotter is clearly taking from Mari Boina's music, along with, I also do hear a lot of inspiration from Lindy Fai's music. So there's that more overt influence that I can hear from other sources that we don't normally associate that heavily with Wardruna's music. But then not only that, the beginning of Himinndotter starts with a chant style. When I say chant in this way, I actually mean like sacred chant, right? But it's in a style of more contemporary composers and also specifically Norwegian contemporary sacred music composers. And again, I didn't write this music, so I can never say for certain where inspiration was taken from. I'm sort of just like in a dark room looking for the light switch and sort of talking about where I think that the inspiration sounds like it's coming from to me, that in reality could be coming from somewhere else. But I'm just sort of, putting out feelers for where I think this is coming from. Because that first opening segment has that old sacred chant vibe to it, but in a more contemporary style. Most of you might be more familiar with Eric Whittaker, who I believe is American, but in the same style of composition, there are two Norwegians, Ole Gielo and Kim André Arnesen, who have made stunning sacred music in the last 10, 20 years or so. And the opening of Himinndotter sounds like something that could have been written by Ole Gielo or Kim André Arnesen. And that, even though that is also in minor, right? It is in this modal minor, which continues to sound just different from what we've typically heard from Wardruna. So between the influences from Mari Boina and Lindy Fai's music and what I'm hearing in this neo-sacred music of Ole Gielo and Kim André Arnesen, it's creating this very new tapestry of sound that we're not used to hearing in Wardruna's music. So all of this is to say, right, that between the music and the visuals, there's something new here. There's something new going on in Wardruna's music. And I think it says a lot about the artistry of Wardruna, the fact that at this point in their career, they are still seeking new things. It's clear to me after Himinndotter, I sort of felt this with Hertan, but it was still very much Wardruna. But with Himinndotter, I actually feel like we're turning the page into a new chapter of Wardruna. And this says a lot about the artistry of Wardruna because if they wanted to, they could pull an AC/DC. They could do the same thing for 40 years and everyone would still love them. They would still be selling out theaters and venues and arenas around the world. But it says a lot, the fact that that's not what they want to do. Instead, Einar and the rest of Wardruna are continuing this journey on their own, right? Wardruna is not just a journey for us. I hope that would go without saying. It is always first and foremost the journey of the artist, and we sort of go along for the ride in a lot of ways. And so this is just another part of their journey of exploring something new. And that brings me to this more overt animist side that we see in Himinndotter. And the last thing I want to say on this stylistic change that we can hear, or that we see being foreshadowed in Birna, and I could also be full of crap. We could get Birna, and this is just a very standout track from the rest of the album, and the rest of the album is more of Kvit Raven, right? So I could have egg on my face by January when Birna comes out, but at least for now, what I'm saying, with the information we have now, is that with this new stylistic direction, I want to take this as an opportunity to say that, Wardruna has a lot of tropes put on them by the people who listen to them. I talked about this in the Viking music video, where yes, especially in the first albums, that Viking label was definitely brought on by Wardruna themselves. And over time, it has almost become a trope, especially in the genre, but people are like, yes, the Viking music band. But the artistry of Einar and Wardruna far transcends trope or style. And what I mean by that is, I do truly feel that no matter what Wardruna does, there's going to be something really beautiful there. And what I mean by this is that I do firmly believe that no matter what style that Wardruna is working in, just the artistry behind Einar and Wardruna's music has been enough so far throughout all of their albums to convince me that no matter where they go with it, something beautiful is going to come of it. Right? So it can be scary, even when you're a musician or a band at the scale with the following of Wardruna, it can still be scary to take steps in new directions, especially if it sounds quite different from what you've been doing in the past. But I don't know. I believe that where they're going is something that, at least for me, is pretty fresh and exciting that I'm looking forward to hearing more of. So with that said, let's finish up this video by talking about the lyrics, which I think, as I said, are the real meat of Himinndotter here. So I'm just going to give some passages that jumped out at me, and then I'm going to talk about why they jumped out at me and why I think this has to do with that broader idea that Himinndotter is an animist's manifesto. The woodland crown has an empty seat. Forest mother, chased into hiding, retreat. Show me who I was and who I am, before the woodlands vanished, before the rivers were tamed. Tell me your true name, when the night sky was your home. And then finally, my sister in the woodlands, hold my hand and let us walk. My dearest sister, would you return home? Life is short without breath. These lyrics are both animist and environmentalist grieving, right? When you consider that line, the woodland crown has no seat, and the forest mother is chased into hiding and retreat, that's a direct reference to the environmental crisis, right? But the animist connection in here is in the language that's used between poet, the one who's speaking, and the person being addressed, right? My sister in the woodlands. If you refer to the woodlands as a sister, you're equals, and that is, animism at its core. But hold my hand and let us walk. Holding hands is what equals do, or parent-child relationship. But if you're asking to hold my hand, right, you're asking for guidance in a lot of ways. And then, of course, my dearest sister, would you return home? Life is short without breath. These are, calls to action in a lot of ways. This is calling us to just the urgency of the matter at hand. Life is short without breath. That is one of the most concise, beautifully poetic ways to address the environmental crisis. Life is short without breath, and we're losing breath, right? Because then also you yourself as an animist are defined by the environment around you. Show me who I was and who I am before the woodlands vanished, before the rivers were tamed. And if you're at all familiar with Norwegian environmental history, that rivers tamed line, I think, has a lot to do with some very specific controversies in Norwegian history regarding rivers and dams and the Sami, right? It's a huge part of modern Norwegian history. So what I'm trying to really paint here in talking about these lyrics in particular is the fact that they're painting this picture of not only an animist relationship with the world around you, but also a grieving, but an optimistic call to action. That's what's happening in the music. The music, as I noted, has been more optimistic, more uplifting, more beautiful, right? It's supposed to be inspiring. And along with these lyrics, where we are typically used to hearing lyrics like this put to really sad music because it's like mourning and grieving for us, instead, this music and these lyrics are saying, let's do something, right? There's still hope if we can all actually start to take action and really start to see the implications of this broken relationship between us and the world that has allowed us to live here for as long as we have, right? And that's why this song in a lot of ways reminds me of Grau, because Grau was another animist manifesto, and if my history is correct, written around the time of the wolf conservation controversy in Norway. Almost said Colorado because Colorado is right now dealing with that same crap, right? There's a lot of controversy around reintroducing wolves into Colorado, and you wouldn't believe just the amount of fighting and how it's not as simple as it should be. So Grau was written at a time when the controversy around wolves in Norway was what I remember as being an all-time high. As someone who doesn't live in Norway, that's what it seemed like from the outside. And so Grau was written in that social climate. And with Einar and Lindy in that music video being in the same room with that wolf from the Finnish wolf sanctuary for pretty much the entire performance, showing we're in the same room. We're in the same room, we're performing music, and this wolf is running around. Really illustrating visually the poetic point of Grau, which is the ring has been broken. You are my old brother, right? And it is also a call to action for we need to remember our ancient relationship with the wolf. And so in a lot of ways, Grau and Himinndotter are together starting to create this repertoire of animist music in Wardruna's main themes and motifs, right? And this is something that I hope that we're seeing more of in the future, because Wardruna has a massive reach. And it's very clear to me that animism and in the environmental crisis is very important to Einar and the rest of Wardruna. So I think if Wardruna can start to use their art, not as overtly like, because these lyrics could also be a John Denver song, right? So I'm not telling us to like create a new hippie counterculture at Woodstock where it's just a whole bunch of people singing about these things to the point where it kind of becomes overdone or just become cliche, right? Cliche to the point of meaninglessness, where even though the lyrics of, of this type are very meaningful, when they're just repeated to the point of almost expectation, the meaning can be lost. So what I think is that ultimately, if I can sort of end this whole spiel on the lyrics and animism, is that I'm really looking forward to maybe Wardruna taking more bold steps into this animist direction, with their music being used to further advocate for this relationship between us and the world we live in, because I think there's a lot of power and a lot of potential there for Wardruna's music. So, guys, that's really all I have to say on Himinndotter so far, just from my first few times listening to it, taking notes, and now making this video and reflecting myself. I've come up with a lot of new ideas just as I do the video, but maybe for a different time. So, Himinndotter is one of the most stunning Wardruna tracks I've ever heard, and the music video itself is also a work of art in its own right. And of course, as we have talked about, but now just addressing, Birna is out in January, and these two singles have been leading up to it. And between Hertan being in the more familiar side, but definitely more of that layered artistry in Hertan, and what we have here in Himinndotter, I think Birna is going to be quite a surprise for a lot of us. I feel like there might be a lot going on that we won't even be expecting. Not to overhype it or anything like that, but I really do think that in Birna we're going to have a new side of Wardruna. I think that's what I ultimately want to say. So guys, thank you for watching. Please do not hesitate to go down into the comments and say what you hear in the song, what your thoughts and reflections are from hearing, because again, in the spirit of music appreciation, I want to foster a more intentional way of us absorbing the music that we listen to, rather than just passively enjoying it as ear candy, right? So look forward to talking to you guys about Himinndotter, and I will see you down in the comments. Take care.